TOTH is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your product and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the websites they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Billy Bob. I see I'm central. All right, today's show, Dustin is not going to be with us. He's on assignment again. And Billy Bob is going to do the introductions. Today our guest is Anthony Montero. Let's roll with the show. Go ahead, Billy Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Carlo. Thanks everybody for watching. Yeah, Dustin's on assignment. We've got Carlo and Ben, and our special guest today is Dr. Anthony Montero. He said we can call him Tony, which is great. But we wanted to talk about is there any basis for optimism? You know, with all these changes, impending World War III, these tremendous geopolitical shifts taking place these days that we haven't seen in 100 years. Is there a reason to be optimistic? So if you guys are familiar with Dr. Montero, he does some great speaking all around the internets and universities, I'm pretty sure. But he's really got a lot of wisdom to share with us, and we are very happy that he's agreed to come on. And I don't want to step on his toes. I don't want to ruin this introduction. So let me hand it over to Dr. Montero, to Tony, and let him just say a few words. Thank you, Tony, very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, all three of you. I mean, this is an interesting and a good topic. Is there reason for optimism? The counterfactual, I guess, is there reason for pessimism? And perhaps the truth is somewhere in the middle. I tend to come down on the side of what I call a realistic optimism. I think there is enough going on in the world, including in the United States, to say that humanity has a fighting chance to resolve the huge contradiction of this moment. That is the contradiction between neoconservative, neoliberal hegemonists and the rest of humanity. Can that contradiction be resolved in a way that's positive for humanity? And I'm not talking about a one-shot deal where everything gets settled. But are we in the throes of a great process, a new process, where humanity will decide the future of humanity? If the question is posed in that way, I'm realistically optimistic. I cannot see any reason for pessimism at this time. If one, in his or her personal being, is committed to doing something, to active engagement with the world and with humanity, I think there's every reason to be optimistic. And just the final thing, I have some experience and kind of a long history in the struggles for social justice and peace, for liberation. I often ask myself, if I am pessimistic, what do I say to the younger generations who must fight for a reason to live and must fight for a world that allows them to live? Do I say to them, there is no hope, there is no way to fight? Go back and just live your life as though you were the only thing that counted? No, I couldn't say that. I won't say that. I think it would be immoral to say that, given my life, given my experience. So, and I'm not being Pollyannish about it when I speak to young people, when I speak to you guys. There is great reason for optimism. There's probably more reason to be optimistic today than at any time in the last 40 years. We did not see a crack in the US hegemony of the world. The US controlled the financial and trading system. The dollar was the reserve currency. There was no military that could challenge the US military. The US people did not understand the circumstances they were in. In fact, the economy for a good part of that time had been stabilized. Most people were doing okay. We're not doing well, but doing okay. And they saw reason to say, well, things will get better. Well, none of that is the case today. The US dollar is increasingly being abandoned. We have what could be another great financial crisis, and maybe we're on the cusp of a recession. How intense, how great, we don't know yet. Certainly, the US military has its hands tied behind its back because the US people don't want war. And young people are not joining the military. And then we could go into a lot of things which I like to talk about most, and that is the country I know best, the people I think I know best, and that is the American people, and what they are and what they are becoming, and what their future is, and how we as revolutionaries must fight for the future of our people in this country as our contribution to humanity's liberation.
I have to say that's a lot of revolutionary optimism, which is very welcome and nice to see, because I'm usually very pessimistic about America, the average American people. And I put on this song, I'm sure you know, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Yeah. And the new video clip, that reminds me of the average normal rural American. Like, that's worth saving. Those are the good, hardworking people. If only they wake up from in front of their screens and realize what's going on. So I'm very happy to see that, because what we said before the show, something was discussed. There's a good anti-war, anti-NATO rallies, but they still seem small. And what we were wondering, I wonder if you want to comment on that, is there going to be a tipping point? What will cause it when they realize, holy shit, like, we spent all the cash on hegemony, all the political power, the diplomatic power, that's out the window. And ultimately, it will reflect back on our lives, on our businesses. And we need to end this charade and build a brand new America. Loaded question, but that would have been, I'm very curious to hear that, because all three of you are in America. I'm always looking in from the outside.
Yeah. Well, if I could just say, and I'm going to be brief, I don't want to talk too much. You know, the American people move in their own time and at their own pace. You know, maybe unlike most European countries, the American culture privileges a certain amount of individualism. So often people will sit around their dinner tables or talk to their coworkers about things that are bothering them. And these kind of discussions go on tens of millions of times every day all over the country. And then at some point, people decide that we can't sit back, and then they move. I think, and polling data is not always the most accurate, certainly not about elections, but on some things they do capture something about the American people. A high level of dissatisfaction, not only with the society, but with the government. So deep that a credible poll out of the University of Chicago showed that about 25% of the American people said that they would support an armed struggle to overturn the government.
Whoa.
And this is not taking into account the 80% who say the country is going in the wrong direction. And so the demonstrations, there were 2 of them recently against the war in Iraq and funding that war. One of them went so far as to call for the freedom of Julian Assange and so on. And it had some prominent speakers and not a huge turnout, but a beginning. So there is something there, there's a lot going on among the American people. And I'll just say this, the American people are poorer than they've been in the last 80 years. We are a poor people. The American people are less educated, even though we have some of the richest universities in the world. Public education is being undone. The American infrastructure has literally collapsed, and it's not safe not just to ride trains, but to ride planes or buses if you can get one. You know, the country is in a crisis now. Of course, the mainstream media, which is merely propaganda for the views of the ruling elite, would make you think something else. And if you're part of the 10, 15% of the well-off in this society, things look good. But for the 85% of us, we're worried about our children, we're worried about our grandchildren. Philadelphia, Ben, that you talked about a bit, Philadelphia is one of the most violent cities in the world, if not the most violent. The murder rate is off the charts. That's the same with Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans.
It's horrific. Kensington Avenue is the main street in Philadelphia. You can watch videos of it on YouTube. It's horrifying. And with the backdrop of that and lower living life expectancy than Cuba, like train derailments like 2 a week or something like that, everything looks to be crumbling. But what you brought up, that would have been my next question, is relation to the mainstream media. Where I think the last statistic I've seen of the main, like CNN, NBC, all those, was an average 70 years of age of audience. So it looks like people are tuning out and looking for alternative sources of information. So I'm wondering if that's true. And how does that bear on, you know, Biden every day tells us the banking sector is fine, Ukraine is winning, we're still the best in the #1 in the world, and also don't jump. I don't know why he loves to say that. But are people beginning to question all of that in relation to what is the latest big bombshell this week, is the Trump arrest on 43 of the same miniature charge in connection with 34, sorry.
But go ahead, 34 charges, but go ahead.
Yeah. I would say this, take anything Biden says with a grain of salt and look at his polling numbers. His are the lowest polling numbers for any president since they've been taking polls on presidencies.
Wow.
Don't believe him. Most Americans don't believe him. And people are concerned that he's not even in touch with the reality right around him. So
it's clear he's not.
No. And then, of course, they're faced with an election next year, which has already begun. And I think the last poll I saw, more than half of the Democrats don't want him to run. But if he doesn't run, who do they run? There's a crisis of leadership, a crisis of legitimacy, a crisis of rule, a crisis of governance. And of course, you mentioned the criminalization of Trump. And that's all it is. And the uses of district attorneys and others to wage the campaign against him, to nullify his presidential campaign even before it gets started. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
It might have the opposite effect. I'd like to take this chance to apologize to the world, because I'm Hungarian, on behalf of Hungary, for George Soros. I'm sorry about him, because he is connected into this case.
Apology not accepted. He's a nightmare.
He is.
I just wanted to say that, and I do this in the humblest way, because you're wearing a T-shirt, Tony, with James Baldwin on it, and he's someone I could not possibly compare with the insight that man had. It was my wife and I marvel over it probably weekly.
Hey,
But,
CARLO, you know it's his 100th anniversary of his birth next year.
Yeah.
And here in Philadelphia, we're going to devote a whole year called the Year of Baldwin.
Only 1 year, the man was bigger than that.
Well, no, we're celebrating his 100th anniversary. That's why.
Yeah, no, I understand. But what I wanted to say was, let's say take something like the polling number of 25% of Americans willing to support taking up arms. Americans are full of hot air. I deal, like we were talking about before, and I deal with them every day. They threaten to kill me every day. No one's ever tried to kill me. I had a couple of incidences. Somebody let some air out of my tires, and there was a smashed window. But by and large, there's nothing really to fear from these windbags, and they don't know anything. And what I would like to say is when one of the we touched upon media, and one of the things media is really good at is shifting blame. Like we briefly touched upon wokeness, supposed wokeness, and the people of the LGBTQ community. Well, the LGBT community, they didn't push this into the limelight. The media did. The right-wing media, in particular, in a very evil way, did it. It wasn't them. They just wanted to live their lives and not be killed in larger numbers than the general population, which they have been since time immemorial in this godforsaken country. So,
just to add, and huge corporations for gain, like massive campaigns,
using them for gain, which puts them out in the forefront, which irritates the yahoos out there, So it comes down to, as the United States goes down the toilet, it's like who's doing the flushing, and I can tell you who's being blamed. African Americans are being blamed. Jews are being blamed. Alternative lifestyles are being blamed. Not Wall Street. Not the people behind all this stuff. And we've had this discussion about MAGA on this show several times. And MAGA is not a groundswell of any sort. It's AstroTurf. It's just like the Tea Party. They have billionaires behind them. They have Thiel, the Kochs, Mercer. I can't remember Bannon's Hong Kong billionaire. All these people are financing things like MAGA, and the whole objective, I would say 90% of the objective of MAGA is deregulation. That is, let's bring about climate change faster so we can have profit. So you want to talk about talking to the kids of the future? If there's no planet to live on, there's no future. And so this notion that we can all get together, and MAGA is only the tiny percentage of working class people, and all that Trump did for working class people was to give the rich the largest tax break in the history of mankind. That was his great achievement. Not to mention deregulating industry after industry after industry. That's just stupid. It's stupid to the core, because what's going to happen ultimately is we're not going to have a planet that's worth living on, and the American people, you're right, they're slow, but they're so slow, they're like the toads in the kettle. When you turn on the heat, and they slowly die. They don't realize it there, and that seems to me to be more the picture we're seeing. And I think that there's going to be a lot of violence around this notion that we're not going to blame ourselves for what happened. We're not going to blame the people on Wall Street for what happened. We're going to blame the defenseless people, or the people that are less able to defend themselves. That's who we're going to blame. And that's just my sense of what's happening.
So yeah, this is a recurring theme on the program, and I feel a little bad for Carlo because we have three maybe optimists against poor Carlo, so we don't want to make him feel like he's being isolated and alienated and attacked.
Man. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I've been dealing with idiots all week. Believe me. You guys are refreshing. You actually know things. I've been dealing with people that can't even spell their names.
But I agree with Carlo that there is a tremendous basis to have skepticism and to lack optimism. Like I get it. You look around this country, you understand how this propaganda apparatus works. You understand where the mentality of the vast majority of people is at, and you can start to embrace hopelessness. And I kind of think that's where Carlo's been for a while now.
I'm not embracing any goddamn thing. I'm just looking at the face. I just explained to you that's what I do all day long.
So I don't mean to attack you.
Idiots.
Yeah,
that wasn't an low lights and idiots. Don't put words into my mouth.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in and say that a lot of what Carlo is saying, this cynicism or the MAGA movement scapegoating people. I'm sorry, but from the outside looking in the Western so-called left, I see a lot of that too, that learned, basically, blame game. It's what Michael Parenti called ABC socialist, anything but class. They will learn to blame each other, someone who learns a little different, intersectionality, as in I'm more oppressed than you, is just a game. And we absolutely need an antidote where you can have anybody by your side in any color with any preferences and just rise up and look at who actually perpetrated this crime on you. The deindustrialization, when it began, 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't the American people who decided that all of the industry should go to China, and what's left is the casino capitalism and arms industry. But I'm still not just for America, on the international scale, I feel tremendous hope and optimism. Even on what I said, the fortunate son America, rural working America, even those who put up the MAGA sign or Make America Great Again, I feel a lot of hope there, because I watched a short segment of Trump's speech after this arraignment thing, and he said, we're going to build, I know it's just slogans and it's a campaign, we're going to build tremendous new cities, we're going to have brand new industries, we're going to do a quantum leap. And that is something, like, if I'm an American average Joe, no Democrat and no Republican so far has given such a positive message out. And also get the bloody, what he calls the deep state out, the permanent apparatus to tidy it up. We're not sure he's going to do it anyway, but I see the message, and I'm sure the American people do as well. We don't have to talk about who's going to be president or elections, but just a bit of hope from me against your skepticism, nothing personal.
Yeah, sometimes we have to look at the objective conditions, although, that doesn't say it all, but we have to look at objective conditions. Again, the American people as a people are poorer than we've been in 80 years.
Oh, yes.
Since World War II. We are a poor nation. The middle class, the middle income has literally collapsed into poverty. A great part of the American people have not yet recovered from the financial crisis of 2008 and that debacle. And now we're going into another one.
Yep.
People are afraid. Now, the question is, how will the American people respond? And I'm not just talking about the American people as an aggregate, as a mass of people, but will part of the response be to create a leadership, a people's organically connected leadership that can show the people a way forward? You know, what I'm talking about is not pie in the sky. This was what led to the civil rights movement, the great Third American Revolution. Who knew where Montgomery, Alabama was in 1955? Who had ever heard of the name Reverend Martin Luther King in 1955? Things begin, there's a spark. I guess I'm using a revolutionary phrase, that begins a wildfire. It takes a spark, it takes a beginning. But the conditions are right for that more widespread movement. Are we talking about everyone? No, not at all. That's pie in the sky. But we're talking about that critical mass that could transform the situation. And given what is going on in the world, a less than majority of the American people can make a huge difference in the trajectory of American politics, and whether or not we will allow ourselves to continue to be run and governed by this small, tiny elite that are more connected to banks and hedge funds than they are to the suffering of the people. I think we're on the verge of toppling that. How it will go, I can't tell you right now. But, you know, Carlo, we're talking about James Baldwin. James Baldwin famously said in one of the essays, I think, in The Fire Next Time, that we must march to achieve our country. And I think we're on the cusp of that. And I think those of us who claim a commitment to the future must insist that we must march to achieve our country. It is our country. These are our people, for good or bad.
Yeah, I just don't see the civil rights movement in all its nobility and its effectiveness as being comparable to what's happening in the U.S. And I think one of the reasons is the U.S. is crumbling because of what's happening in the outside world. I mean, the approachment of Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the rise of trade in various currencies, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, all of that,
Yes.
all of that is sucking the lifeblood out of America. And what happens traditionally when Americans are faced with that, I'm thinking more of white America, is that they seek, like Ben put it, a scapegoat. And in my daily exchanges, Putin's a devil and a demon. Z should be killed. That he should be drawn and he should be killed. The Australians are going to kill Z, and all this nonsense. That's all I hear. So already the blame game is now placed on the international community. Orban is not excused from that, by the way. There are
I know.
Who actually knows who Orban is, or has heard of Hungary, not mention the Magyars of the Hungarian, Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire. There's occasionally somebody with who read a book sometime in their life, but usually it's just ninnies, total know-nothings. And when they're convinced by the mainstream media that they're to blame Z, he's a devil, that they're to blame, that the China is bankrupt because they have a $240 billion debt. Oh, come on. How many trillions?
Carlo, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Let's continue there. I think.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but Ben, let me ask you, how do you then live your life?
How do I live my life?
Yeah, in the face of this, what you're saying.
I don't really think about that. I just go day to day. Most of my life is taken up with writing. That's
Okay.
what I do most of my day. And I was a, not to get too personal, but I was a rare and used book dealer, and we still have to do that because Social Security doesn't provide us enough money in the Washington area to survive. So I'm a 75-year-old man carrying around 50-pound boxes, with a bad back and a near fatal heart surgery. So I don't think about that. I could drop dead at any time. That's what
Scapegoating and
my
pessimism.
doctors tell me.
Let's pick it up there after this break. I hope that's how that works.
Well,
So the producer might take us to break. He might not. There's, I get it. I mean, so I don't want, again, I don't want to have like a 3 against 1 on Carlo, making him
No,
be optimistic, Carlo. Be optimistic.
If you're gonna let me say one thing, okay, so you don't bring it back to me anymore, and ask me personal or try to get personal questions out of me. I forgot what I was going to say, but go ahead, Billy Bob. I'm sorry.
Well, so yeah, I don't want to do that, Carlo. That was not, that's not gonna be good viewing. To get you in a corner and berate you to be optimistic. No, and again, I think, Carlo, there's a lot of legitimate reasons.
You know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer. This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
I think if we're going to talk about, what is the chance that something better might be achievable? What is the percentage? Like, so say it's, it could be from 75% to 95% to 0.1%. But I think the point that Dr. Monteiro was making earlier was that, regardless of what that percentage is, our behavior is going to be the same. Like, we still need to go out there and do what we can, do our part to further, the issues and, further the revolution. There's so many issues with the ruling class and overcoming the ruling class. But even if there's like a snowball's chance in hell, like, what are we going to do otherwise? So our behaviors ought to be the same, whether or not it's a small percentage or a big percentage of chance for success. And, and we can argue, like, I agree with Tony, in the last 40 years, this is the best opportunity right now because of the way that it's going, with Russia, China, the instability, and all these cracks that we haven't seen for decades and generations. And it's really providing a chance, a greater chance to result in something positive that wasn't possible 40 years ago.
Well, I see my point. I see my position as being one where I step in and I deal with the scum, and you guys, you do your job and you create the ideal system. That's my job. My job is to be down here in the slime with these assholes every day of my life.
Oh, on a side note, yeah, Carlo is in Washington, D.C., so
right. So
might be different than
all kinds of slime, from the top to the bottom. I've had run-ins with Elliot Abrams. I've had. You want to go into the list? Let's talk about it. Nah. But the thing is, is it when I get up in the morning, like I've done ever since the 60s, when I was fighting my draft board in the Vietnam War situation. I deal with idiots. That's my job. You guys do your job. You're the intellectuals. You know all this shit. I don't read Marx. Frankly, I read the Communist Manifesto when I was 12, twice. scared my parents to shit. But I haven't read that much Marx. It bores me. I'm more likely to read Lord
Marx is difficult.
Byron's poetry than I am to read Marx. I'm more likely to read Edmund Husserl's Phenomenology than I am to read Marx, or Theodore Adorno's anti-enlightenment work than to read Marx. That interests me much more. I have 15,000 personal books. I've read a lot. But what we're talking about here, this kind of optimism, I don't know anything about it. All I know is I'm dealing with idiots, fucking stupid people every day. And I feel like that's my job. So if you see that as pessimistic, fine. I'm just dealing with these people on a day-to-day basis. And I'll do it to the day I die.
And it clearly must be frustrating.
Don't confuse me with being pessimistic or not optimistic. It doesn't occur to me to be either one of those.
I have
nothing else to say for the show.
I'd like to. No, don't do
that.
That's
a lie. That's a lie, Carlo.
That's a lie. I'd like to concede your point, not just because you're in DC, but I see why you would be you would have a negative outlook. I think, and I'd just like to hold on. I lost my train of thought for a second, but yeah, okay. Like in DC, we talked about the mainstream media and the all-time low trust. I think it's lower than Congress now. Maybe not in DC, where you get these fabricated everything about Xi is evil, Putin is the devil, and all that. I heard an opinion in Hungary that we are becoming a new Belarus and it's time to get out. I said, if we're becoming a new Belarus, I'm fucking damn, man. They didn't know what to do, but it was wonderful. By the way, it turned out funny. But a lot of people are tuning out. And this is a fact. This has been like the popularity or the trust put in mainstream media is very low and people are looking elsewhere. And I'd like to put forward that maybe our job is to show that I don't know the strategy either, as Tony said, like a third party or doing some, maybe it starts with rallies or all that. But we need to put forward a positive perspective. And I'd like to bring you a video. I'm not sure people know why Vladimir Putin is so like insanely popular in Russia right now. And I came across some videos that I'll paste into chat. Maybe we'll paste it in the descriptions, which is a 20-year, what happened in 20 years in the major cities of Russia, you know, and you look at this decay. It's like most American infrastructure, but that was factory buildings, that was community centers and the roads and everything in decay. And before and after, like fast forward to 2020, like he blocked corruption. He said, we're going to build everything up. We're going to restore everything. And now, even though the war initially, well, the SMO was very unpopular, like 300 liberals left Russia. A lot of people were divided. 1 year has proven to the Russian people that, yeah, the West did this. They took us for a ride and we need to do something. And if the same thing can happen in America, Joe Biden, he robbed us. He took us for a ride. He destroyed our credibility globally. He squandered like our superpower, even great power status. I think Donald Trump said that in connection with the dollar, that we might not even be a great power. And of course, livelihoods, prices of eggs, all of that. I see a reason for hope, but I can see the opposite here in Hungary as well. People stuck to the screens, reading exactly what was told by them and believing it word for word and being unaware that there's another world out there. But there is another, I see another direction too. I don't know about America. I always say that, but I see that here. Okay.
Tony.
Yeah. I live in Philadelphia, which is the poorest of the large cities. I don't just live here. This is where I was born. This is where I've lived all my life. I feel that I know somewhat the people of this city. I have a feel for it. There are idiots in every city and all over the place, but I'm more encouraged by what I feel is a greater sense of reflectiveness. I don't get the sense that people are standing still looking for scapegoats. I think they have already targeted who is to blame for the crisis that I'm talking about this city now, that this city is in. You know, it's that this is the beginning. It's not the end state. We're at the beginning of something profoundly new, a very dynamic political situation. And it is dynamic because of the people and how they view their leaders. You know, like Gramsci said, the old is dying, but the new has not yet been born. You know, I'm not trying to invoke intellectuals, and I'm not trying to position myself as an intellectual separated from the life world of the people that I live with. I don't see myself, I don't act, and I am not that. So my point is that if you know the people, if you feel the pulse of the people, it's clear that the US people have not been this much against their government in 80 years, including its war policies, its financial policies, its empire policies. This is what we're talking about. It's all over the place. If we would just have the, I would call it humility, to hear the people. And often their unheard cries, what is coming from their hearts. And they do have hearts. They do feel. They are concerned about their children. I mean, we're not talking about people who are all that different from people anywhere else in the world. The difference is that we have a more skillful, a more ruthless ruling class ruling this country, which makes it a little more complicated to work through all the ideological and propagandistic traps that they set for us. But I think that we're looking at something new. American people have never been this poor. And poverty doesn't only produce negative feelings, it can produce conditions for something different to happen in terms of struggle among people.
True. I'd like to add another good signal, a good sign. I think we briefly discussed it last week, but under the guise of the TikTok ban, the Restrict Act is being passed or being considered. I don't know what the status is right there, but that's a good sign to me. I mean, it's terrifying, but it means they're losing the war for people's minds. It means they're not in control of the narrative. Yeah. If you look at the Nord Stream and the kicking and screaming of, let's just put this boat there, the Andromeda, and people not believing that crap anymore. I've never seen anything like it. Not only on the world stage, I think they're losing at home with
yes.
Putin is evil, he's going to be shot. I mean, Saudi Arabia just said, I'm not here to please the Americans. When has that happened? When has Devin Dagleden, a German MP in the Bundestag, said it's time, it's been 70-something years for the Americans and their nukes to leave and go home. She's not the main voice in Germany, but that's never happened before. Malaysia wants an Asian monetary fund. I mean, people have been killed for this kind of stuff and they're just powerless against it. So all around the world, people are saying we can resist this. And in that regard, I would say within America too. And just so you know, in Hungary, we don't like the last 30 years sponsored by America happening to us. But even in Tehran, in Iran, when they say death to America, the great Satan, if you're talking to Iranians, they are talking about the permanent bureaucracy, the political class. Even they don't hate the American people, and neither do we here. We just feel a lot of injustice for what the American political system has done to our continent, to a lot of the world, and there's no better place than Africa, where it's just, there's Russian flags all over Africa now.
So I agree, Ben, that's, you know, the ruling class, the signs are every... What's that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I meandered a bit, sorry. I jumped.
The ruling class, you know, it seems obvious with the signs that they are concerned, right? And this big censorship legislation that they're using TikTok as a pretext, that's a sign of that they really are going to have to get things tightened up. and on point to deal with this stuff. And also the lawfare against Trump. I mean, that's unprecedented. I mean, that's never happened in our history before. And I think it's a sign that they're you know, they can't continue this facade of democracy. They've got to, you know, that's a low priority. Pretending their democracy is not their top priority. Their top priority is maintaining their global hegemony and control over the, you know, the attitudes and perceptions of the American people and the Western people in general. But it's good. It's good that they're worried, and again, that brings the opportunity that gives us the optimism that we have. But I'm glad Carlo isn't going to say anything for the rest of the show, because we could just say whatever we want, and he just has to listen.
I don't like gagging anyone, but I'd like to.
No, I know. No.
That's one reason for hope as well. The other reason is when do revolutions start? When there are differences, there's conflict within the ruling class, the elites, the bourgeoisie, and it's very clear that some factions in Washington D.C. and in the powers, or you know, the Silicon Valley, the billionaires, like there's been so many tech bankruptcies and layoffs. It's amazing. Like McDonald's closed all their corporate stores and layoffs coming. There's a lot of conflict there, and that's when people can creep in, saying, okay, now it's time for us to have our say, to have our needs met when they're at war with each other. It's always something to look at. Yeah. It happened in Russia before the Great October Revolution. It happened between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao. I know, Carlo. Sorry, I've said my.
No, I think that's a good way to perceive what's going on right now. I mean, Trump definitely has the backing of a minority faction within the ruling establishment. He's got his backers, but the consensus, the majority consensus, definitely opposes him. And so that internecine, however you pronounce that word, warfare is great for the working class, and it presents a lot of opportunities, and it's necessary for for that to precede revolutionary change. But it's,
I think, Billy, I mean, I don't think it's a far stretch to look at this situation in the United States and see something close to a pre-revolutionary situation. I mean, on the other side, it's not that far removed to look at the situation and say it looks like a pre-Civil War situation.
That's what I was going to ask. What do you think? A constitutional crisis at least, but is this going to turn into... You've seen what Paris looks like. Is that something that may happen?
Well, what would happen here would make Paris look like Disneyland. Because, there are more guns in the United States than there are people. The American people are armed. And so it would be difficult to think that you can win them back through defeating them with arms. There are enough arms and enough people who are prepared to fight back to make that a non-starter, which then means that the ruling elite must find a way to resolve this short of military repression of the American people, because the American people are armed, maybe more heavily armed than the police and the National Guard. We just don't quite know now, but they're armed. So a pre-revolutionary situation merely says that we're entering upon a different political process, a revolutionary process. I would prefer that to civil war. However, and here I would like to just invoke Martin Luther King. I think it's very misunderstood when he talked about a peaceful path to radical change, which is another way of saying a democratic path to achieving a new democracy. And when we say the democratic path, we're talking about a path less than armed conflict. I think we're definitely, it's not optimism or pessimism. All one has to do is look at the data, the polling data, the ethnographic data, the data based upon our own life worlds and experiences. And what we see When a people reject their ruling class to the extent and at the level that the American people have, you're entering a new moment of politics. I reject the idea that the American people are by nature racist and fascist. There is racism, there is structural and institutional racism, but here again, I agree with the experience of the civil rights movement. Millions, tens of millions, perhaps the majority of the American people, now more than at the time of the civil rights movement, recognize that the problems besetting this country cannot be resolved by separating the nation and reinstituting legal and other forms of white privilege. Most Americans who are poor do not accept that. You know, we can look, people talk about the suburbs, suburban moms. Well, do they really know what the suburbs demographically look like these days? The suburbs often are more integrated than urban areas are. A city like Philadelphia is not that integrated. You get suburbs outside of Philadelphia, right beyond the borders of Philadelphia, that are racially more integrated. So we're looking at new things, different things. And of course, I'm a sociologist of sorts, and I'm interested in evidence. Of course, I have my bias. My bias is revolutionary. So I have a revolutionary bias, which means I might miss things. That's why I have to listen to people like CARLO. I might be missing something. You know, perhaps I'm completely wrong. But that's my bias. But given my bias, I'm still committed to understanding things from the standpoint of evidence, what we call empirical data. And I think the data in the United States, opinion polling of the American people suggests that the American people are less racist than they've ever been in the history of this country. Is that adequate? No. But don't act like nothing has changed. The American people were changed by the US Civil Rights Movement. They were changed by the voice and vision of Martin Luther King, which they're still learning. They were changed by the example of Paul Robeson.
Oh.
In fact, the great heroes, increasingly of the American people, are African American. If you were to ask me, the great ideological and moral weakness of Trump and his movement, and Trump in particular, is that he is not reckoned with the legacy of Martin Luther King. And as great as Trump thinks he is, I would suggest to him, you're only a beginner in this compared to Martin Luther King. And that's the weakness. If he can get that, he's almost unstoppable.
Thank you for that revolution.
Yeah.
I want CARLO to respond as much as anyone else.
No,
I just wanted to add that this is MLK before he got the Che Guevara treatment, as in defanged, you know, it's just about equality. The real Martin Luther King, you know, if you actually read up on all that he said.
And that's part of the ideological struggle in this country, to fight for the real Martin Luther King, for the real Paul Robeson.
The real Paul Robeson, who was in the Soviet Union and the best version of the Internationale, my favorite version is.
That's right. For the real Abraham Lincoln, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to contrast that with a tweet. One of the Trumps, I think it was Junior, who tweeted that, like most of it I agreed with, we're going down, the dollar's fine, blah, blah, blah. And because of this radical left government, that just made me chuckle. Because anybody who calls the Biden team radical left is out of their mind. Contrast that with MLK. But Carlo Parcelli, I think you should have.
I just wanted to say Trump hasn't moved 1 inch toward a sane view of civil rights since his Central Park 5 days. and his New York Times articles that he or ads he took out, condemning innocent teenagers to death. I mean, he hasn't moved 1 inch from that, and that's his appeal. That's his large appeal
Carlo,
to people.
would you agree that still Donald Trump is still and is an insurrectionary candidate? Would you agree with that?
No,
on the international stage,
he's right in the mainstream. He's a billionaire who's relying on billionaire money, and they create AstroTurf for deregulation. That's his whole thing. He doesn't give a rat's rectum about revolution or the American people.
Counterpoint, yes.
God,
you're probably
he's
right.
A narcissist. There.
I love your rants, but I saw him hold the hand of Kim Jong-un on the demilitarized zone and almost created a peace between the Koreas. That's very different from.
There was with Bolton in the background. There was absolutely no chance that was going to happen.
They undermined it, obviously.
They just saw it as like this is what an international narcissist does.
Okay, ego polishing then.
I push the Czech representative out of the way so I can be in front of the cameras. No, he's an idiot.
Carlo, I will always love you.
I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, it's just some fact you can't get over.
So Tony, every show is a different experience here. We didn't know how it would turn out. I mean, we're coming up on the hour. We did okay. We haven't turned hostile really against each other, so that's good. Do you want to kind of sum up anything? Do you want have any final thoughts?
No, just that this was very enjoyable. Believe me.
Oh, I'm glad we didn't scare you off because I was gonna if we had more time.
This was better than many interviews I do. I enjoyed this so much, and I hope I'm invited back. And
absolutely,
definitely, so much to discuss.
And in things like this, I would say we could be. I think we could be skeptics, or we could be less skeptic. I think the only danger is to slide into cynicism. But I think we all agree we're in a different world politically in the United States than we've been in.
The world is in a new paradigm.
Absolutely. And how we live, what we do, can make a difference to the future.
Yeah. And who knows, by the time we have you back a week, 2 weeks from now, who knows what the dollar will be doing? Who knows what the international scene will look like? Nobody knows, And, we could have discussed, sorry, this is the last couple of minutes, like the barriers to entry of, forming a third party, creating people's power. Maybe that would be a good topic for next time because I think it can be done. But of course, it's an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's tons of obstacles, to keep that from happening. Because that's their fear. That's what they spend their time, thinking of ways to stop from happening. But yeah, no, I am very optimistic. I mean, as the years go by, this year, next year, I mean, just imagine every week there's these huge shifts. I mean, I'm so looking forward to seeing events play out during the rest of this year and next year. I think it'll be incredible, and we will be back here to discuss them. Every Thursday on the Foreign Policy Review. Does anybody else want to say anything?
Last word,
yeah.
And then I think Anthony should have the very last word, maybe Carlo and Anthony. I would say that the mere fact that the elites want you to be fighting each other, you transphobe, you MAGA trash, you soccer mum, is reason enough to just look at your fellow human being, listen to their plight, and try to work together towards a better future. That would be my last little thing.
If I get one more response, well, who's Julian Assange? Never heard of him. Buy a computer. What are we communicating on? A computer. I get people, what's the Nord Stream?
Jesus.
What do you mean Nord Stream? Come on.
Those aren't the only people. And sorry, Tony.
Well, thank you. That's all I would say.
Oh, yeah. We'll hang around a bit afterwards too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
after
we'll
the
be here.
show's over.
The thing is, nobody here has the ability to actually end the show, so we can continue discussing, and the producer will nix it whenever he's able to. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week. So we appreciate everybody that nobody really commented this show. I didn't get any commenters. We usually have some people weighing in. But who knows? Maybe the TikTok censorship has already kicked in, and they've already throttled us down. Probably.
Well, next time, so maybe bye. I would have loved if I got that, perfect cut, but we'll see when it comes. Yeah, last week I think Joe, my friend, kept commenting, but we didn't see anything this time.
Tony, I do appreciate your coming by, and I'm glad that you enjoyed yourself. It's tough to hold a 4-person discussion like this, and to have it, really hitting on important things. But I mean, I think we do a good job. We all have a sincere desire to analyze things and to get things correct and to make things better. But it is, it can be tough to juggle 4 people. I think we're still live. We're talking like we're backstage, but we're still live.
Yeah, we're waiting for the outro. At some point, it should come in.
Yeah, I sometimes when I'm talking with my friends, I will definitely try to throw information out there, but the situation is analogous to me with Iraq, because so many people bought the WMD program and the other lies that went along with them. So when I kibitz with these people, I always end up with the feeling that, well, they're being lied to again, and will this particular set of lies, when they realize they've been lied to, will it change them? And of course, I have to say, given I'm much older than anyone else on this panel, is it no? I've been seeing them being lied to systematically since, like I said, the early to mid '60s, and they always swallow it, and they never have a mea culpa moment. The Americans never have a mea culpa moment, never. And I don't think that they're going to have, say, a mea culpa moment over Ukraine. They obviously, when I kibitz with them, they don't know the basic facts. They don't know about Bakhmut. They don't know about like I said, the Minsk Accords. They have no notion that the Donbass was being savaged in 2014. That there were 80,000 Ukrainian, essentially Nazis, waiting to go in 2020 and wipe out the remaining 2.5 million Russian-speaking people. They have no notion of this.
I think it's
you said 80,000. 80,000?
Yep.
Yeah, 60 to 80. I've heard 80. So I mean, they just wanted to go and exterminate the Russian-speaking people.
It just needs to be said as often as possible.
And
This war is 9 years old now, and Russia is ending it.
Right, and as Christopher Black said, I think it was just last week, he said that they wanted to go beyond the Russian borders, the Ukrainian Nazis, and go right into Russia. So, and Christopher's got some brain power. He's a brilliant intellect. So, I have to say that I think the world impinging on the U.S. is going to force change, and I don't think. I don't share the notion it's going to be positive. So
1 year ago, Carlo, just a little hope for you personally. A lot of people approached me who said they lied about Syria. They lied about